Disclaimer: Warhammer, Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 30,000, and the Horus Heresy are all owned by Games Workshop Limited 2023. Please support the official release. Actus, a Doom Legion short story, based on an unofficial Warhammer fanbase story. The constant lasgun shots are deafening in the tight hallway and hangar of the ship. The noise bounces off every corner, flat surfaces, and metal beams making up the ship's structure, an aggressive takeover of any listener's auditory. Lieutenant White has no choice but to observe with his eyes. His guardsmen are behind a makeshift barricade in the hangar, taking potshots down the only access hallway. Their actions speak for themselves in this cacophony of sounds. Riker is manning the autocannon mounted in the middle of the barricade, firing short bursts every 10 seconds or so. This suggests to White that Riker is running low on ammunition. Stark is hunched over Finnerty with a medical kit spread on the floor beside her, and Sergeant Finnerty, or was it Finnerly, White can't remember, is lying in a pool of blood. The fact that the painkillers and syringes are all in their containers tells him that the sergeant will not make it, and this is just those beside him. It isn't going well. "Lieutenant White, what is your location? What is your status?" prompts his Vox. In all this action, it sounds like a whisper in a storm. He barely realizes when the Vox came to life. "We are holding at the entrance of Hangar Bay 170. As he said it, he wondered if he should have added that instead of defending the hangar, they were now being prevented from leaving. "Lieutenant, we have inbound reinforcements. They need to use your hangar now." The Vox seems to be erasing the reality of combat for a second. "We always hear what we want to hear." "Understood. We will open the hangar door." As he finishes his sentence, he stares at the line of guardsmen fighting by his side. It is time to choose who can run the fastest to open that hangar, but couldn't even shoot a Baneblade if he was sitting in it. "O'Malley! Oi, O'Malley! Get to the gantry and open the hangar bay. We have reinforcements waiting to get in." The skinniest guardsman turns to the lieutenant and nods before moving to the side of the barricade, away from possible wild lasgun shots. "Well, can't be sick looking like that without having a few screws well placed," he thinks as he looks at O'Malley going at a full sprint towards the gantry, making sure there is always something between himself and the blockaded hallway. A strange flash of light grabs his attention as the lieutenant turns his head with his las pistol ready to take some shots over the barricade. Purple and red in color, fast and nearly imperceptible. His brain took too much time to realize what it was before turning toward what seemed to have been its origin. A tier stands in the air on the top of the stairs leading to the gantry, just floating above the metal flooring. O'Malley has stopped in his tracks, looking at it from the bottom of the staircase, and he is slowly moving back with his lasgun pointed at it. "We have a breach. Stark, Cormier, support O'Malley. We need to let the reinforcements in at any cost," yelled White as he pointed toward the gantry. The two guardsmen turn on their heels and input shots of lasgun at the tier while kneeling behind the barricade. As the shots enter the tier, nothing seems to happen until a bloody chain axe slides into reality just in front of it. It is followed by an enormous red and bloody armor materializing in the hangar. The hulking form looks drenched in blood and viscera. It stands just above 2 meters tall and is about 2 to 3 guardsmen in breadth. "Berserker!" yelled O'Malley from the bottom of the stairs, emptying his lasgun in full auto. Stark and Cormier give every shot a near-perfect aim, and even then they mostly ricochet off the armor of the monstrosity. As the heretic beast steps outside the tier, it looks straight at O'Malley and releases a bellowing scream, a scream of rage, of hate, of murderous intent. "George, Camp, Tory on me, Stark, Cormier flank for the balcony, Riker, no more withholding, fire at will," ordered White. As the unit leaves the barricade, the sound of Riker's autocannon covers everything, melding with the scream of the chaotic beast. The instant O'Malley flinches from the beast's unexpected scream, it lurches down the staircase in a single jump. In an instant flash, the berserker's chain axe slices the air like a giant razor blade. O'Malley's lasgun and left arm are split in half. O'Malley reacts by taking 5 steps back as the berserker fills his view, not registering his injuries. As White and his 5 guardsmen run towards the gantry, he can see O'Malley is about to get struck again. In a bizarre response from the sheer brutality of what just happened, O'Malley tries to raise his missing arm to aim his absent lasgun. White reacts immediately and yells at his troops, "Fire! Open fire!" As he aims with his las pistol, he sees his men in a perfectly drilled firing line to his right from the corner of his eye. Opening fire on the heretic, the berserker seems stunned for a millisecond before releasing a small chuckle and resuming his swipe. It cleaves O'Malley from his left shoulder, crossing his chest and finishing its path beyond his right knee. The left side of his body collapses where he stands, while the right side slides on the hangar floor towards his allies. His head flails by a thread of skin and whatever is left of his muscles. Weird twitches on his face give the feeling that he is still alive and feeling everything. Without any guardsmen close to the berserker, the lieutenant shouts the only possible order, "Cormier, the melta, now!" Like a well-oiled machine, the guardsmen switch formation. Cormier kneels where he stands, reaching to grab the melta on his back. George and Camp move from flanking Cormier to a human shield position. Stark and Tory unleash a full auto lasgun fire as they run to the hangar's left and right sides, respectively. If the berserker was a military mastermind, he showed it on the spot. As Stark and Tory try to divert his attention away from the melta, he takes a swing and throws his chain axe towards Cormier. It moves across the hangar faster than a lasgun shot. George barely has time to flinch before having his face and right arm slashed off. The chain axe finishes its path on the hangar floor near the barricade. Riker is too busy cackling and emptying all his saved ammunition to realize what is happening behind him. A loud, maniacal laughter echoes in the hangar as the berserker braces itself to run head-on towards the guardsman line. At this point, Lieutenant White is just hoping that the bait sticks. The goal isn't for the meltagun to kill it, the goal is for Stark or Tory to reach the gantry and activate the hangar bay. He knows that they can only buy time for them at this point. White fires everything from his las pistol while strafing to his left, away from Cormier, and yelling at the top of his lungs, "The Emperor protects us! Die, you heretic bastard! Return to your hell, you filth!" He doesn't finish his sentence before the berserker pushes itself in the direction of Cormier. The speed is so wild that it's hard to tell if it jumped or was running. Camp tries to block the creature but is hard pressed to the side by a gigantic fist. The sound of his ribs breaking on impact seems to echo in the hangar. His body hits the floor further away and rolls a few meters before stopping. Cormier has just finished taking the position with his melta when Camp's body disappears from his view and a dark red armor shadows over him instead. He releases the melta shot. The berserker's chest explodes in a perfect gaping circle. Entrails hang around the burned flesh, and the body slowly collapses under its weight. Cormier screams in pain from the blast back of molten metal and flesh that sprayed all over his body. Realizing what just happened, Lieutenant White turns to the gantry to yell at Stark and Tory to open the hangar door, but his words falter as he sees the staircase to the gantry in a melted state. The top section of the stairs and the corner of the gantry were melted away by the melta. A lasgun hangs by its strap from one of the remaining lower support beams of the staircases. "Hangar door is opening, sir," the voice came from the gantry. Stark waves as she stands up from behind the controls for the hangar door. "Stark, I need you to check on Camp and Cormier," White yells as he runs for the barricade. He will need to get her a round of drinks after that one. The hangar bay's age is showing. The loud and grinding cogs take an eternity to start moving the door. Stark had the time to drop from the gantry and give Cormier a good dose of painkiller before the hangar door was half opened. "Riker, what is your status?" asks White as he reaches the barricade. "I've gotcha another minute if I keep it going like that. They got scared, though." Riker is laughing it off, oblivious to everything behind him. "Save what you got left. Take only shots that count," ordered the lieutenant. Riker nods and returns his complete attention to the hallway with a smirk. "Gotcha, sir." As the lieutenant turns toward the hangar door to see their progress, he can see Cormier crawling on all fours in pain towards the barricade, lasgun dragging by its sling, and half of his face burned away. His burnt flesh scars his unrecognizable face. To the side, he can see Stark pushing a knife into Camp's immobile chest. As the blade pierced Camp's body, his torso moved again with jerky breaths. On the other side of the hallway, the heretics are gaining momentum as a volley of lasgun fires hits the edge of the barricade and beyond. White instinctively kneeled behind the barricade for cover and looked at the reinforcement progress. Through the hangar door, he could see a ship hanging in front of it, waiting for the moment it could slide in. It bears a metallic gray with green trims. A giant white skull with a maw can be seen on its nose on a black background. At first glance, it looked like a storm eagle, but with a different range of weapons. He can't recall ever seeing this pattern before. As the hangar door is nearly slid into position with a slow crawling, Stark, who moved to the barricade, waves to the lieutenant. She's holding Finnerty's long-range communication. She says, "Lieutenant, we are being hailed by the reinforcement. They request an update on our situation." Within a heartbeat, White answers, "We are pinned in the hangar by cultists down the hallway. They are trying to prevent the reinforcement entry." Stark transmits the message word for word. As Stark listens to the response, Lieutenant White takes a last view around the barricade to see what he has available to support the reinforcement landing. If they lose the barricade at this point, it will all be in vain. Without having time to complete a support plan in his mind, Stark yells at everyone, "Clear the barricade now! They are opening suppressive fire!" As she completes her sentence, a searchlight on the gunship shines straight down the hallway, blinding everything in its light, even the guardsmen. "Everyone to the side!" yells White as he tackles the oblivious Riker, who seems happy to empty a few more shots down the hallway. As the gunship enters the hangar, it showers the hallway with a continuous spray of twin Avenger bolt cannons. The blinding light and the deafening sound of the twin Avenger bolt cannons render all the guardsmen crouching, covering their ears and gritting their teeth. The suppressive fire from the gunship reforges the hallway into a shredded mockery of metal, giving it a cavernous appearance. After a few seconds, the gunship finally ceased fire. As he lifted his head to look at the reinforcement movement, White saw the gunship slide back into space to let a well-recognizable Thunderhawk take its place. The oversized copy of the gunship, bearing the same marking as the latter, slid into position in the hangar and landed. The opening front-load bay of the gunship reveals a few dozen Space Marines, who step down the gangway. Each one is donning gunmetal gray armor, black pauldrons, dark green trimming, and Aquila. The lieutenant laying over Riker is taken aback. "Angels of the Emperor, have mercy! We are saved!" The Space Marines divided themselves into 3 squads of 10 Astartes. 2 squads stay on both sides of the Thunderhawk while the last one moves toward the barricade. A Captain Space Marine is leading this forward squad. As the captain walks, he points to the corpses of O'Malley, Tory, George, Finnerty, and the Berserker, one at a time. The front squad of 10 divides themselves into smaller groups, walking in different directions. The captain reaches the lieutenant. He stands tall and imposing. He observes White. He seems to be scanning him, analyzing, and taking in the lieutenant. The few seconds of silence seem eternal in front of such a massive being. The angel finally spoke. "I am Captain Arcadius of the 10th Company of the Doom Legion, Master Mortifer. I have brought 3 tactical squads of battle brothers to answer your call for help." The lieutenant, bringing all his military professionalism, stands tall, makes the Aquila sign with his hands and replies, "I am Lieutenant White of the Cadian 5. Captain Arcadius cuts him off before he could finish his drilled salutation. "Is your ship captain alive? Are you from the Indomitus Crusade?" The lieutenant hesitates to finish his introduction. Not wanting to lack respect or enrage an angel of the Emperor, he uses all his composure to answer promptly, "Ship Captain Delario is on the bridge, my lord." As for the Indomitus Crusade, we have yet to reach the fleet. As you can see, we were. White hesitates and chooses his words carefully. "We were distracted." "Distracted?" says Captain Arcadius. He takes a moment to look around the hangar. Turning his focus on the lieutenant again, White realizes that his helmet lenses are as dark as the void. There is no shine to them, like black holes sucking in all the light. He does not move his gaze from White. Is that distraction the reason you shot your guardsman? The question makes Lieutenant White swallow hard, regretting his word choice. Well, my lord, we are being attacked by heretics, cultists to be more precise. The ones we were fighting in the hallway. As he answers, he feels like he is walking in a minefield. Captain Arcadius is so close to him that he can hear the servos of his armor working and clicking. And the fact that he has his neck over 45 degrees up to be able to look at him in his dark lenses does not help the situation. A berserker attacked, and I ordered the usage of the meltagun in the confined space of the hangar, which seemed to be a viable solution at the time, my lord. As White answers, he keeps repeating to himself that casualties are frequent in these types of scenarios. Even knowing this, he feels unease. The order is perhaps frowned upon by the Astartes, and now that he has explained it to Arcadius, he wonders if he will be disciplined for his decision. After a long silent stare, Captain Arcadius nods and says, "You should not have let them distract you, Lieutenant." His tone is severe. "Nonetheless, I understand your enthusiasm to fight the heretics. I believe that we can help to relieve this distraction for you." As Lieutenant White and Captain Arcadius are having their discussion, one Space Marine kneels beside Stark, who is working on camp by applying pressure to his chest. "Will he survive?" asks the Space Marine as he puts his gauntlet over Camp's head. In a caring gesture, he pushes Camp's hair from his brow. The unconscious Camp is gasping for air. Stark shakes her head and replies, "His lung has been perforated, the internal bleeding can't be stopped, and he has lost too much blood already. He won't make it." The Space Marine turns his head to look at Camp, and he mutters a litany. No blood for the blood god, no flesh for the plague god, no skull for the skull throne. As he finishes his litany, Stark sees his fist curl into a ball. Crack! The heavy gauntlet crashes through Camp's head and hammers the floor. Camp's skull shatters like an eggshell, spilling broken bone and hair all around his corpse. The surprise threw Stark back. As she lands on her backside, she wonders what could bring about such a violent response, her eyes wide open and her mouth gaping. She hears similar cracking and crunching behind her. As she looks over her shoulder, she sees a Space Marine removing his armored boot from O'Malley's corpse, with hair and blood dripping from it. A gauntlet grabs Stark's right upper arm, lifting her in the air. The pain from the pressure on her arm makes her want to scream, but the feeling is quickly forgotten as a bright jet of flame incinerates Camp's body. The heat's proximity causes her to close her eyes and turn her head. She can feel the metal of her shin guard burning her flesh. The smell emitting from the burned flesh makes her choke. The heat starts to dissipate as the Space Marine holding her brings her closer to drop her near the lieutenant, who at this point is looking around like trapped vermin trying to find a way out. A heavy flamer showers the staircase in gantry, where the meltagun disintegrated Tory. O'Malley and George's corpses are thrown together over the berserker to receive the same treatment from a combi flamer. "The cleansing has started. Do not worry. When we are done, you will be purified," explains Captain Arcadius to the lieutenant, who is shocked by this intense cremation of his dead guardsmen. "Arcadius, don't forget that one," says Captain Arcadius, pointing at the burned Cormier, who was barely moving on the hangar floor. As the Space Marine turns and walks toward Cormier, Stark slides between them, hands up in front of her. "I can save him! I can save him! He's just under painkillers!" Arcadius stops and turns toward Arcadius. A series of clicking Vox channels opening and closing could be heard from the angels. Arcadius' booming voice resonates in the hangar. "I insist you warn us when he will die. No blood, flesh, or skulls will be left on this ship unattended." The tension between the guardsmen and the Astartes is starting to be palpable. White sees that the reinforcement is getting more than he bargains for. "Stark, drag Cormier away from the hallway and make him comfortable. Riker, grab any ammunition and weapons that you can gather. I want an inventory of what we have left to defend this location." The order from Lieutenant White made Stark and Riker switch from a tense position to their designated assignments. As his guardsmen react, he turns to Arcadius. "Captain Arcadius, we will keep you posted of any change within the hangar." May the Emperor be with you, said White while making the Aquila sign with his hands, hoping to let his saviors move on with their mission. Arcadius and Acadius looked at each other. No vox clicked this time. As they both turned their heads back to focus on Lieutenant White, Arcadius replies, "You are going to guide us to the ship, Captain Lieutenant. It is not a suggestion." White realizes quickly that getting rid of the Savior Angels won't be as easy as just saying goodbye. "I need to stay with my guardsmen. It is my duty, and I have orders to keep the hangar bay secured, my lord," said White in a last attempt to get rid of the doomed legion. "Acadius, retrieve the injured guardsmen. We are bringing them with us," says Arcadius. A few clicking vox channels followed that order, and 2 Space Marines from the captain's squad moved and positioned themselves on both sides of the convoluted hallway. "There, the hangar is secure, Lieutenant. Now, take me to the bridge." "Sir, I understand your urgency, but it will take time to traverse the hallways. Most of our guardsmen and armsmen are pinned in these corridors. Reaching the bridge will take hours, and that estimate is if everything goes without interruption," pleaded White. "We will take the direct path, Lieutenant," Arcadius answers, pointing his head toward the hallway. As White turns to look at the hallway, he strains to see through the debris, smoke, and fires that partially obstruct his view of the passage. As he focuses, he realizes that the gunship did not just engage the cultists, it shredded multiple walls, ventilation shafts, and access corridors. It created a jagged cavern that extended deep within the ship. He heard Arcadius's vox click, and one of the tactical squads near the Thunderhawk moved toward the hallway. As they walk past him, White realizes that their equipment differs from his experience with another chapter of Space Marines. At least half of them carry a random assortment of flamers, heavy flamers, and combi flamers. The squad marches in perfect formation. Without any hesitation or change in speed, they step on the heads of cultists that lie ripped and shredded in the hallway, cracking and crunching as if it were a drilled technique. When they reach 2 breached walls down the hallway, the squad disappears to the right, but not before 2 Space Marines carrying flamers blast behind them down the hallway, burning any heretic corpses. With a second click from Arcadius's vox, the second squad moves down the hallway. These proceed further. They cross a few jagged metal beams and push aside metal sheets that bend away from their support. When they reach a blasted ventilation system, they turn into it and vanish. "Lieutenant, you and your guardsmen will stay in the middle of the formation. Acadius will be by your side." Another clicking noise, and 4 Space Marines enter the hallway with Arcadius at the front. Acadius follows, prompting the guardsmen to rush behind him. 2 Space Marines close the rear of the formation. White turns to look at the hangar. He can see the 2 stationed Astartes watching them walking away like stone sentinels. Unmovable. Whatever cultists find their way here will have a dreadful day, thought White. The wrecked hallway is barely passable for the guardsmen. There are jagged metal sheets, electrical sparks jumping between torn wires and tubing, all of that not even considering the fires and smoke floating above their heads. Stark worries about Cormier. He can't evade the smoke in his state, and Acadius carries him like a dirty rag over his shoulder. She supposes that when they reach the central corridor, he will probably be asphyxiated and get his skull crushed before being incinerated like the others. "Who does that?" whispers Stark to herself. "A master tactician that knows how to secure all the objectives in the minimum amount of time," replies Acadius, surprising Stark that the Space Marine could hear such a low whisper. She does not bother to correct the subject of her comment, but she believes it could be a good idea to alleviate the tension that had built up with Lieutenant White earlier. "Your name is Acadius, and your captain is Arcadius. Are you brothers?" "We are brothers of the Doom Legion, yes," answers Acadius without slowing down. "I mean, like blood brothers, you know, same blood." "Yes, we are sons of Gulamen," he answers disinterestedly. White's patience wears thin with Stark's persistent questioning. He recalls his encounter with Captain Arcadius and wishes to minimize further interactions. However, before he can reprimand Stark, the guardsman interjects once more. No, I mean, related by blood in the sense of having the same face, she insists, clarifying her point. Arcadius halts abruptly, pivoting to face Stark directly. He strides towards her until his chest plate looms over her, his dark lenses fixated on her. White swiftly maneuvers to Stark's side, attempting to mitigate his guardsman's behavior. These are helmets, guardsmen. They do not reveal our true faces. It would be prudent to focus on your duties rather than my lineage, Arcadius rebukes, casting a stern glance at both guardsmen. Stark wonders how the Space Marine fails to grasp her meaning. No, I mean, Lieutenant White's elbow jabs Stark under her chest plate, silencing her mid-sentence. Arcadius' lenses flicker towards him before he resumes his march. Stark, if you ask any more questions, I will silence you myself, White warns in a hushed tone. If you require assistance, I can accommodate, Arcadius interjects, his voice resonating ahead of them. Regret fills White as he realizes his mistake. He shoots Stark a disapproving glance, but the Space Marines behind them urge them forward. After traversing for what feels like minutes for a Space Marine or an electrical fire jungle for a guardsman, they finally reach the ship's central corridor. This corridor spans the entire length of the ship, wide enough for 2 Imperial Knights to walk abreast. Amidst the echoes of lasguns firing, White detects a clicking noise emanating from Arcadius' Vox. In response, Arcadius seizes Cormier, suspending him in the air. He brings his helmet close to Cormier's face, fogging his lenses with each breath. Satisfied, he casually tosses Cormier over his shoulder and continues. We may proceed. Lieutenant, your guardsmen will remain within our formation, Arcadius commands. As they advance, the Space Marines form a rectangular formation, with Arcadius positioned among the guardsmen. 2 Astartes flank them, while the remaining 2 lead the way alongside Captain Arcadius. White compares the formation to a convoy of Leman Russ tanks escorting him. As they progress towards the bow of the ship, the sounds of ricocheting ammunition grow louder, punctuated by faint flashes ahead. The escort halts, and a series of clicking Vox signals a tactical adjustment. White observes as the Astartes swap positions, reconfiguring their armament. They synchronize their shots, creating a deafening echo within the ship's structure. Following Arcadius' command, the Space Marines revert to their original positions and resume their pace, leaving behind the silence that follows their decisive action. They marched for a good while before reaching the corpses of the 5 cultists taken down earlier with the bolt guns. 2 of them appeared fused by the shredding power of the bolts. Another was missing everything over his abdomen, his rib cage opening wide like tentacles trying to reach the ceiling. The last 2 were mangled. One was missing everything over his shoulders and left arm, while the other lay beside him, seemingly cut in half, his guts spilling from both sections. White recognized perfect marksmanship when he saw it, but their precision in taking down 5 heretics with 3 bolts was impressive. As he finished his thought, he heard a now too familiar sound. Crack! White! Observed Arcadius, removing his armored boot from the skull of one of the cultists. The noise gained momentum as crunching and cracking sounds emanated from the 3 other cultists' skulls. As the escort formation moved past the cultists' barricade, the Space Marine carrying the heavy flamer at the back of the escort cleansed the entirety of the corpses. They never stopped moving, maintaining a perfect cleaning formation. White marveled at their efficacy, reflecting on their years of ship-to-ship combat and heretic control. They resumed their progress down the central corridor until they reached the barricade of the armsmen who had been fighting the cultists. Arcadius' voice boomed. We are the Doom Legion, sons of Gulamen, warden of the Faithful's deliverance. We need to talk with your ship, Captain. At that moment, they stopped. Stark tried to peek through the angel's legs, like a curious child attempting to see whom his parents were talking to. She could see a barricade with 6 armsmen standing in attention behind it, seemingly interested to know who killed the cultists for them, and turned them to ashes later. I am Sergeant Gregory of the Faith and Endurance Armsmen. By the Emperor's glory, we are glad to see you, my lord, said the sergeant, signaling to an armsman standing next to him. The sergeant whispered in his ear, and as soon as they finished their exchange, the armsman crossed a platform to their left, leading to a staircase against the right wall. He ascended the staircase, disappearing out of sight. "We are sending your request to the ship captain." "It should just take a moment, my lord," said the sergeant as he made an Aquila sign with his hands. Arcadius turned to face White. "You must grant us our request to speak promptly with the ship captain, Lieutenant." "Present us to them," Arcadius insisted, catching White off guard. The request from Arcadius was unexpected, and White wasn't entirely sure he understood it. I don't understand. You want me to tell them who you are to the armsmen, my lord?" Arcadius pushed his gauntlet onto the lieutenant's left shoulder and said, "To the armsmen. They need to know who we are." "But you already presented yourself, my lord." I don't know what else I could say. They have sent a messenger, as we all could see." "Do you want me to request a second messenger, my lord?" White's confusion grew, compounded by Arcadius's pressure and Arcadius's apparent frustration. "Present us, Lieutenant, now." Arcadius's voice betrayed his impatience, the entirety of the tactical squad focusing intently on White. Realizing he had no choice, Lieutenant White straightened his posture, cleared his throat, and adopted his most professional tone. "Armsmen of the faith and endurance, this is Brother Captain Arcadius of the 10th Company of the Doom Legion, son of Robut Gulaman. In the name of the Emperor, he has brought 3 tactical squads of Astartes to assist us in our time of need." White hesitated slightly, unsure of what else to say under the intense scrutiny of Arcadius. "Improvising," he added. "They have years of experience cleansing and purifying heretics from the Imperium." The armsmen listened attentively, showing no sign of discomfort or awkwardness. They remained at attention throughout the entire introduction. The next moment was peculiar, as neither guardsmen nor armsmen knew how to react to White's affirmation. Then Arcadius broke the silence. "Lieutenant, you could have simply requested that we don't wait for the messenger, as we are in a crisis and we are the best option to save this ship." Lieutenant White wasn't certain if he detected a faint chuckle or smirk behind that remark. "Why did you not present all of us?" asked Arcadius, still pressing his gauntlet against Lieutenant White's shoulder. White sensed a hint of amusement from Arcadius, and now he felt foolish for the entire monologue. The messenger returned, hurrying from the staircase. "My lord, the ship captain is awaiting you." "He needs fixing," said Arcadius, dropping Cormier like a foul-smelling object onto 2 armsmen. The Doom Legion immediately proceeded to the staircase. For the first time in the last hour, White experienced a moment of respite. There were no Astartes scrutinizing him like a trainee. He couldn't recall the last time he found himself in such a tense situation with a high-ranking officer, perhaps when he was a White Shield. As the Doom Legion squad prepared to ascend the staircase, Arcadius paused and turned toward the motionless lieutenant. "We need you on the bridge, Lieutenant," he said before continuing on with his squad. Stark glanced at White and remarked, "I think they are toying with us. If not, they are dangerously unstable." White grabbed Stark by the arm and whispered urgently, "Are you out of your mind? You want both of us to be executed. They could hear us. Insulting an angel of the Emperor is worse than treason." Releasing Stark, he shook his head in defeat. "Let's at least finish this," he said as he headed towards the staircase. He noticed Stark following him from the corner of his eye. At this moment, her presence was a welcome relief. He would owe her a drink after all of this. On the bridge, the ship captain stood on the balcony's edge, overseeing the staff's activities, shouting orders, and requesting status reports. As White reached the top of the stairs leading to the balcony, he noticed 2 Astartes stationed at the entrance, standing sentry and observing any newcomers without reaction. They paid no heed to him or Stark. 3 other Astartes positioned themselves at each outer extremity of the balcony, while Captain Arcadius, and another Astarte waited in the middle for the ship captain to conclude his orders. The ship captain executed a swift military-controlled movement, turning on his heel and concluding his turn by tapping 1 foot on the mesh flooring of the balcony. White recognized it as a familiar gesture from basic training. I welcome you aboard the Faith and Endurance, my lords. I am Captain Delario of the Navy 45th Fleet of Cadia, Captain Delario greeted in a disciplined, nearly robotic tone. White was surprised by the tone but understood that facing the angels of the Emperor could induce such military precision. Arcadius nodded in acknowledgement. I am Captain Arcadius, from the 10th Company of the Doom Legion. He gestured to his right. This is Lieutenant Arcadius, and this, he indicated the other space marine to his left, is Sergeant Dominar. It is an honor to have you on board, my lords. We have already received confirmation that your squads have secured the reactor core and the life support system, Captain Delario reported. Hearing this, White recalled seeing the 2nd Tactical Squad entering the venting system. He wondered if they had planned the destruction of the hallway to create a faster path within the ship. The ship captain continued. With the core secured, I was able to allocate my resources to other urgent matters. Once this is completed, we will be able to depart for Terra within a few days. He straightened his posture. No words of gratitude can adequately express what you have done for us today, he concluded with a bow, forming the Aquila with his hands to show reverence. I have questions, Captain Delario, Arcadius requested. Anything you require or inquire, my lord. How did you come under attack? Arcadius' tone was accusatory, but Captain Delario answered nonetheless. After the fall of Cadia, many civilians were evacuated to different space stations. We were tasked with participating in the overflow control of civilians within those stations, attempting to alleviate some strain from the overpopulation, you see. The ship captain wiped his brow with the back of his right hand before continuing. But we were careless. Some cultists managed to infiltrate the civilians, and the vermin bided their time until they could board the ship and reveal their true intentions, attempting to seize the faith and endurance for their own. Do you know which specific space stations they originated from? They appear to have come from all of them, my lord. We had warnings. Reports of deaths among the civilians aboard the ship were dismissed, attributed to mere space fatigue. The ship captain sighed. We should have been more vigilant. He lowered his head in shame for a moment before taking a deep breath and concluding, You are not only resolving our heretic problem, my lords, you are rectifying our mistakes. My mistakes. I assure you they will not be repeated. White's complexion paled. The ship captain had admitted to incompetence before the Astartes. He feared he would be executed on the spot for confessing to neglecting heretics. Arcadius appeared unfazed by the information and even empathized with the ship captain. We understand your predicament, Captain. Traitors like these can lie dormant for years, even centuries. We are well aware. Rest assured, we will not leave this ship until it has been thoroughly cleansed and purified. Stark cast a sidelong glance at White. He understood her silent question. Are they going to kill us all? Glancing around the room quickly, White realized that none of the space marines had moved. They remained calm, though he knew their calm demeanor could be deceiving, especially considering their remarkable speed in combat. When we received your distress signal, your message indicated that you were part of the Indomitus Crusade. Is this correct? Inquired Arcadius. It was the first time White had heard the Astartes speak with such curiosity. Indeed, my lord, replied the ship captain. We were in the process of jumping for Terra when we were attacked. The plan is to join the main fleet of the Crusade after dispatching the civilians to where they were needed. As he finished, he turned his head to peek at the star map before returning his gaze to Arcadius. The Primarch is alive, then? Arcadius asked. White noticed that all the space marines in the room seemed to move toward the ship captain, as if the anticipation of his answer was a magnet. The ship captain nodded, smiled, and replied, Yes, my lord, the son of the Emperor has returned. Rabut Gulaman is alive and well, leading the crusade in person, my lord. Servos could be heard on the bridge whining as if they were crying from the news. A click from Arcadius's vox silenced the noise. Finishing his answer, the ship captain lowered his head in shame again. Arcadius lifted his head, looking at the ship captain from above. The heretics are a distraction. but they will not become more than that, Captain. Strangely, as Arcadius finished his sentence, he turned his head ever so slightly in White's direction. White tried to evade direct eye contact, and without looking at Arcadius directly, he noticed that the Astartes kept his gaze on him for far too long. "My thanks, my lord," said the ship captain, bowing to Arcadius. "Captain, I need to communicate with my chapter master. In private, it is of utmost importance," Arcadius requested. "As you wish, my lord. A communication line in one of our briefing rooms will be made available immediately," the ship captain responded, waving to an armsman on watch and instructing him to prepare the room for Captain Arcadius. "If you would, my lord," the armsman invited Arcadius. They both disappeared under an archway to the side of the bridge balconies. Communication line open 999, M41 Faith and Endurance. Captain Arcadius, 10th Company, Doom Legion. Faithful's Deliverance, Chapter Master Constantos. Status update. The ship is boarded. Heretics are being eliminated and purified. Query. What is the status of the primary objective? Response. The crusade has been confirmed. Truthful. Gulaman lives. Directive. Add your force to the ship and proceed to Terra. It is imperative that you establish contact. Acknowledgement. Understood. It shall be done. We are observing some potential. Directive. Test rigorously. No weakness shall be allowed. What about the 4th Company? Response. Still missing. Directive. Assume corruption if encountered. Do not turn your back if found. Affirmation. Affirmative. Inquiry. Any sightings of vectors of pox? Response. Negative. Directive. Make the next contact once the primary objective is complete or a secondary objective is obtained. Acknowledgement. Understood. Communication line closed. Dash. Lieutenant White and Stark are conversing with one of the armsmen who attended to Cormier. The injuries will undoubtedly leave scars, but to their relief, the armsman confirms that he should be battle-ready within a few weeks. "Some good news, besides the reinforcement, of course," remarked White. "I'll keep you informed if you wish, Lieutenant." "Please do, armsman. Dismiss." The armsman salutes before turning and exiting the bridge via the staircase. As he watches the armsmen depart, White takes a moment to observe the ship captain and Acadius engaging in small talk, which surprises him given their previous interactions with the Doom Legion. "I see. Credit to the Doom Legion for their steadfastness over so many millennia." Captain Delario acknowledges the information Acadius is sharing. He then continues, "May I ask you a question, my lord?" "Feel free to ask, ship captain." "You and Arcadius have similar names. Wouldn't you be related?" White braces himself, anticipating the Astartes' response, recalling his earlier interaction with Stark. However, the answer is not what he expected. "The confusion is understandable, ship captain. We are not related." "It's just a coincidence of providence," replies Acadius in a reasonable and understandable tone. Observing the difference in interaction between Acadius and the ship captain, White notices Acadius subtly turning his head in his direction. He could swear that Acadius was staring at him. Unsure of what to do, White averts his gaze as if remembering something important he needed to discuss with Stark, attempting to deflect any suspicion that he noticed the Space Marine's interest in him. "We need to return to the hangar, but first, we must request another unit to be attached to us. Once we're finished here, I'll make the request," White explains to Stark, trying to ignore Acadius's intense gaze. Stark is listening, but her mind seems elsewhere as she gazes vaguely in Acadius's direction. She whispers to the lieutenant, "Sir, I believe they are mocking us. They have been more than courteous to the ship captain and are being abrasive with us. Don't you find it odd? Stay focused on our task, Stark, and refrain from openly judging the angels of the Emperor. You may create unnecessary problems." White placed his right hand over her shoulder, attempting to convey a sense of consideration. "Let's just concentrate on returning to our objective and ensuring we stay alive for the remainder of the day, all right?" "Sir." "Yes, sir," she replied, still not entirely convinced of the Doom Legion's intentions. Before stepping onto the bridge, the heavy footsteps and mechanical servos of Arcadius can be heard from the side archway. "Ship captain, if I may have a moment," he requested as he reached the balcony edge. "My lord," said the ship captain, turning to face him with utmost respect for the Astartes. "The Doom Legion chapter master wishes to offer our assistance to accompany you as reinforcements until you can join the Indomitus Crusade. If you would accept such an offer, of course." As Arcadius made the announcement, the eyes of the ship captain widened. It took him a moment to recover from such a generous offer from an Astartes chapter. "My lord, this is an honor, if not a gift from the Emperor himself. We would never refuse such a blessing." The professional demeanor of Captain Delario seemed to falter for a moment, the excitement of the news overtaking him after facing numerous challenges. He regained his composure by clearing his throat and straightening himself. "We will make arrangements for accommodations for you and your angels as soon as this ordeal ends," bowing respectfully to the Space Marine. "Yes, after the ordeal is concluded." This time, Arcadius's voice shifted to a more serious tone. "We will require one of your men to serve as a liaison for our needs during our voyage." The ship captain took a moment to consider, holding his chin in his right hand and scanning the bridge. His gaze settled on Lieutenant White, who was subtly attempting to avoid eye contact. "Lieutenant White has been fighting by your side since your arrival, and I believe he did not lead you astray here?" asked the ship captain to Arcadius. "I would not ask for anyone else, ship captain," replies Arcadius, who seems to accept White as a candidate before even being proposed. White releases a slow and quiet sigh as he hears the news that he won't be getting away from his saviors. His eyes are fixed on an empty spot on the bridge floor. Lips pursed, he inhales a deep breath through his nose and accepts that he will have to deal with the angels a little bit longer. As his eyes level with the view of the balcony, he realizes that 8 Astartes are staring directly at him. He wonders how a man can fight against impossible odds, stand his ground against the onslaught of enemies, and yet be put off by allies, angels of the Emperor at that. "So be it," said the ship captain, as he broke the invisible tension that only White seems to be feeling. "Lieutenant White will be in charge of liaison with—" A series of clicks from Arcadius' Vox stops the ship captain. "My lord," inquires the ship captain. The 7 Space Marines are moving in an unnerving way, like agitated kids who are waiting for a treat. Another click from Arcadius' Vox made them all stop and be still like statues. "I'm sorry, ship captain, but we have news from our gunship that a heretic vessel is latched to your ship," explains Arcadius. What is our status?" yells the ship captain as he turns to his staff below the balcony. "Captain, there is nothing on our Auspex scanners." The voice came from the bridge just below the balcony. "Well, either you are blind, or we are being blinded. Find out what is happening now. I want to know the integrity status of the ship. We need to know if there is more." The ship captain holds the balcony railing so tight that his knuckles are turning white. "Captain Arcadius, my lord, I must request your aid once more." Even before Captain Delario could finish his sentence, Arcadius was turning on his heel, and a Vox click made all the Space Marines fall in line behind him. "We will aid you, ship captain." "We will make it a personal matter," replies Arcadius as he moves to exit the bridge. White wasn't sure what Arcadius meant by making it personal, but from what he saw in their behavior, they must mean it. "Lieutenant White, come with us." The sentence jolts White out of his thoughts. Arcadius is standing at the staircase doorway, staring at him with his squad in a line formation behind him. White takes a step as he says, "My lord, yes, my lord, come Stark," which was abruptly cut off by Arcadius. "I said, Lieutenant White. Did you hear me ask for someone else, Lieutenant?" Everyone on the bridge jumps from the intensity and strength of Arcadius' voice, surprising them in such an already tense moment. White freezes in place, instantly regretting opening his mouth again. The only ones on the bridge who seem unaffected are the Doom Legion Astartes, who simply stroll down the staircase behind Arcadius. Everyone on the bridge returns to their tasks as if nothing had happened. Stark leans toward White and whispers, "Sir, be careful. Something is wrong with them." "No shit, Stark." He doesn't finish his sentence as he pulls his last pistol from his holster and follows behind the Doom Legion. As White races down the staircase to follow his saviors, he can hear the servos from their armor straining and whining louder than he had ever heard them since they came aboard the Faith and Endurance. This is a sign that they are taking this seriously. As he hits the landing platform at the bottom of the staircase, he sees the 6 armsmen they encountered earlier standing at attention as the last Astartes passes them. This time the Space Marines are moving in a straight line, and his protection is not a priority anymore. He knows Stark is right. Something is off. But what should he have done? Stay on the bridge and enrage the angels further? That wouldn't have helped anyone, and it's not as if it's a real possible option. They are moving fast, and he needs to get into a full sprint to catch up behind the line. Even then, he needs to maintain a jogging pace to keep up with them. Echoes of firefights still bounce in the central corridor, but nothing can be seen in the darkness. No flashes, no movement, just darkness with a small glimmer of red where the floodlights are. After a couple of minutes of striding along, 5 Astartes at the back of the line make a sharp turn, one after another, to enter a doorway to their right. White hesitates, wondering if he should follow them or keep going. Arcadius is still leading the line, holding a steady pace. White doubles his speed to catch up with the shorter line without waiting for a reaction or being left behind. As he reaches them, he can hear bolter fire coming from the doorway behind him. He wonders if they memorized the ship before landing or if they have the schematic within their helmets in some way. The central corridor branches out to the right. Arcadius takes the new path, followed by Acadius and another space marine whom White believes is Sergeant Dominar. A foul smell starts to burn White's nostrils. The more they progress, the thicker the scent becomes. The dim red floodlights paradoxically emit a greenish ooze. Visibility is starting to get foggy, like mist over a body of water. Even with his coat over his mouth, the particle density is increasing, choking him as he moves further in. The leading trio of Astartes seems unaffected, but they are wary. They constantly scan from side to side, expecting problems, and White is starting to get nervous as he barely can keep up and breathe. Some organic matter covers a sealed door, and from the burst of gas emitted from random orifices and cavities, it seems responsible for the foul smell. Arcadius and Acadius stop, letting Dominar move forward to incinerate the nightmarish flesh covering the walls. The flamer pushes hard, bathing the wall in a flaming jet of fire. When the organic matter is completely burned to dust, Arcadius moves toward the sliding door, Acadius on his 6, and Dominar as a sentry, watching the path behind them. "Stay behind us at all times, Lieutenant. And do not speak, no matter the reason," says Arcadius, glancing in White's direction. White thought he must look pathetic with his teary eyes, coat raised over his mouth, and las pistol barely hanging in his hand. The door slides open, and both Arcadius and Acadius push in. As White crosses the doorframe, Dominar presses a few buttons on the door's keypad, closing it behind them while keeping himself on the other side. This side of the door looks like a pressurized room with a latch door for ship-to-ship connections. White is astonished to see a space marine standing near the opposite wall. He bears the same colors as the Doom Legion, but something is off. The armor seems corroded, and flesh seems to be bursting at the joints. A similar foul stench appears to be emanating from his body as little puffs of spores are ejected from random joints in his armor. From afar, he could still easily pass for a Doom Legion Astartes. White's military discipline kicks in. Like O'Malley in his last moment, he raises his weapon to open fire. However, Acadius puts his bolt gun in its trajectory, preventing any possible shot. White stares at Acadius, who ignores him, staring down at the heretic space marine. He and Arcadius are in a loose stance. They are not showing any sign of discomfort or aggression toward the intruder. And it is at that moment that White realizes that this scenario looks horrifying. Both angels are completely relaxing before a betrayer of the Imperium, a sworn enemy to the Emperor. The despair starts creeping into his body. Trying not to alert Acadius of his realization, he tries scanning the room for any way out, but it is apparent that he is trapped with them. His planning for an escape was shaken by the voice of the intruding heretic, Astartes. A gurgling voice mixed with a mimic of a human somewhere drowning within it says, "Ah, brothers, welcome, welcome to both of you." As he welcomes them, he lifts both arms in a welcoming embrace. Green sludge drips from his joints as he holds the position. A small spray of gas escapes from his shoulder like a poisonous mushroom spitting out spores. He continues, "It has been far too long, my brothers. It is good to see you." A bubble of sludge pops from a tear in his helmet. The grotesque thing is an abomination of life. Chills run down White's spine as he contemplates the simple fact that it exists before him. Arcadius responds to the mockery of an Astartes with cordiality. "Yes, indeed, a long time. We have been searching for you, my brother." All of the companies that were sent away, to be exact. A chuckle gurgles and bubbles from the heretic. "Oh, is that so, my brother? Well, you have found me." Turning his head toward Arcadius, he continues, "Never too far away from your brother, Arcadius. Millennia can go by, and some things never change." Arcadius quickly responds with a laugh. There are things too amusing to cease. In its cursed way, the heretic shares Arcadius's laugh. White grows furious about this heresy. He should have known from their behavior. He should have figured it out, Stark warned him repeatedly. He hates himself for not realizing it sooner. A sneer causes him to look up at the heretic, who is now focusing on him. "You carry pets, Arcadius?" the traitor asks. "Prospects, brother, prospects," Arcadius calmly replies. "Prospects. Do you seek to replace us, brother? Replace us with, what? Worthless humans." This time, the heretic's laugh lacks genuineness. "We aim to reclaim our lost, brother," says Arcadius this time, positioning himself between the heretic and White. The heretic's laugh starts turning into a growl. "You did not lose anything to recoup from, brother. We are here. You just need to answer our call." Now Arcadius is no longer laughing, and White notices Arcadius slowly tightening his grip on his bolt gun. Arcadius continues, "We lost everything when that traitor saint sent you away. Is that what they told you? That he was a traitor? He chose us because he knew we could see the truth. Oh, if you knew what we saw, brother. We can show you if you choose to join us." This time, the heretic extends his left hand, offering it to Arcadius. "The truth, brother. Do you want to know the truth? You were all sacrificed for nothing. You all died when you went into that accursed eye. None of you came back home. If your truth was so great, why did you abandon us to our doomed mission?" Arcadius is getting agitated, and the heretic shares his reaction. "Oh, is that true, brother? We all died. Then please tell me how I stand before you. You wanted us to return home after learning that we were lied to, that our mission for millennia was for nothing. You are delusional, brother." The pressure boils the heretic's flesh. Sludge is jetting out of his joints, and the gurgling in his throat becomes a constant growling. Arcadius lowers his head to gaze at the floor. "I am delusional, you say, for standing to our life purpose, for having a meaning." Arcadius pauses, shaking his head from side to side. Slowly he raises his head to look the heretic in the eyes. No, you are right. I am the delusional one. I've let a corpse call me brother." As soon as Arcadius finishes his sentence, Arcadius raises his bolt gun and sprays the heretic, bathing the traitor in a shower of exploding bolts. The monstrosity stands as the bolts twist and deform his body, his flesh ignoring any biological senses. In defiance of life itself, the heretic raises his bolter in response. Before the first bolt could exit the chamber of his bolter, Arcadius is already on him, lodging a knife between the ceramite plating of the heretic's shoulder bearing his weapon. As the bolter fires, the pressure from the shot dislocates the arm, sending the aim off to the side of Arcadius and White. Even with this injury, the heretic swings his other arm, throwing Arcadius off balance and stumbling against the left wall. "You could have become so much more, brother, but you chose death," says the heretic as it braces itself for an attack, but a click from Arcadius' Vox stops him in his tracks, making him turn towards White near the entrance. As White realizes he has his attention, a heavy gauntlet throws him to the ground. From the floor, he sees Dominar pushing ahead with a raised heavy flamer, discharging all its payload on the heretic. The burning flesh and the screams of agony of the heretic merge into a shriek of melting noise. White slowly stands up, never taking his eyes off the burning heretic. As Dominar releases the trigger of his heavy flamer, Arcadius stands up. Ignoring the burning corpse, he walks towards the doorway to exit the room but stops beside White. White stares at Arcadius standing beside the burned corpse who is reciting a litany. No blood for the blood god, no flesh for the plague god. He pauses, drops his foot on the charred head of the heretic, and stomps the skull to ashes. Without averting his gaze from the corpse, White quietly finishes the litany in unison with Arcadius, no skulls for the skull throne. The burning flesh casts flickering light and shadows across the scenery, resembling a bonfire on a cold night. Lieutenant White, Arcadius interjects, I will need communication with my chapter master as soon as we reach the bridge. Without shifting his focus from the ashes, White acknowledges the request. I understand, my lord. At this point, Dominar and Arcadius flank White, all three of them fixated on the ashes of a purified brother of the Doom Legion. And then it hits him, like a revelation from the Emperor himself. Where the hell is Riker? Thank you for listening, and we hope you have enjoyed this short story.